According to one of the most accurate pollsters, Donald Trump has a big lead over Kamala Harris. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video. Today, we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because it appears that Donald Trump is surging in the swing states, and this isn't coming from some random pollster that no one has ever heard about. This is coming from Atlas Intel, not CNN, not Fox News, not Rasmussen, not Trafalgar, Atlas Intel. For those that don't know, Atlas Intel is easily one of the best pollsters out there, so whatever they say, it usually happens. And well, right now, they have Trump with big leads in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. But you may notice something very strange with his poll. Notice a certain state that is voting for Harris? Notice it? Yeah, they have North Carolina voting for Harris, and not just by 0.1%. According to them, they have Harris winning North Carolina by 2.5%. Is it possible? I guess. Maybe there's a possibility that Trump loses North Carolina, but wins Arizona, wins Georgia, somehow wins Michigan by 3.5 points, and loses North Carolina. I guess it's a possibility, but I find that so unlikely that I give it like a 0.1% chance of happening, because it's technically possible, but you're talking about trends going the opposite direction. I just don't see that happening. It's very unlikely. But what I do think happened here, which again, I'm not denying the possibility that maybe they found a trend in North Carolina that no one else is picking up. I guess that's a possibility. But what I think happened here was they just got bad data out of North Carolina. And there's a bunch of reasons why that could happen. I mean, for crying out loud, according to them, they had Harris winning men in North Carolina by like 7. Yeah, that's right. They had her winning men by 7 points. In my opinion, that tells you that, yeah, there's something wrong here. What I actually think happened in North Carolina, and you could argue a little bit in Georgia, was the fact that they got hit by a hurricane. And these people, well, they lost cell service, they lost power. That could explain why they got some weird results out in North Carolina. Now, people are going to say, but it could be reverse coattails. Maybe Mark Robinson is doing so bad that Trump is actually losing support because of it. For starters, no. Reverse coattails do not exist. How many times we got to say this? It has never happened. And before 2024, no one ever suggested that, oh yeah, reverse coattails, especially at the presidential levels, are actually real. They may exist for Senate races and gubernatorial elections, but not for the presidency. Reverse coattails don't exist. That's why Phil Scott in Vermont can win by 50 points, but Democrats can win the state of Vermont by like 40 or whatever. Because guess what? It's a down ballot race. It has no impact on the presidential level. Why can't people understand that? Reverse coattails do not exist. And secondly, just look at the crosstabs. It's very odd what happened in North Carolina. It's very strange that men are voting for Harris by 7. It's like, really? Are you really going to tell me with a straight face that Republican voters that were voting for Trump, they're going to vote against him because of Mark Robinson? What? You're telling me that these same voters, they have stuck with Trump through everything, but this is the time that they're going to finally bail on him because of Mark Robinson. I call bullshit. But oddly enough, that's how Atlas Intel explained the results in North Carolina. Reverse coattails. No. I think what happened was you got some bad data. Which, listen, every pollster's going to get it. It's nothing against them. I'm just saying that they probably got some bad data out of North Carolina. And instead of saying, hey, maybe it's because of the hurricane, maybe it's because we missed a bunch of Trump voters, instead of saying that, they're just saying, well, it's because of reverse coattails. You know, I guess it's a possibility that for the first time ever, it could exist, but even then, I find it so unlikely that I don't think it's going to happen. Could it happen? I guess, but I just don't think these voters, they're going to vote against Trump because of Robinson. And even then, Mark Robinson, they had down by like 20. It's like, He's gonna lose, but I highly doubt it's gonna be by 20 points. I just don't think there's enough Republicans bailing from him to make it a D+20 race. Is it possible? Maybe. But either way, outside of North Carolina, you notice a consistent trend. Trump is up in Pennsylvania, up in Wisconsin, up in Michigan by a lot, up in Georgia, up in Arizona. So even if North Carolina and Nevada are breaking for Harris, let's just say it happens, well, according to this poll, Trump still wins. He still gets a majority in the Electoral College. So even if he loses Georgia, well, according to Atlas Intel, he would still win. Which, by the way, I highly doubt that this map's going to happen, but even if it does, it's a Trump win. Trump wins the Electoral College. He wins because he's up in Pennsylvania, up in Michigan, up in Wisconsin, up in Arizona. It's more than enough to win, even without Georgia. Hell, he could win Georgia but lose Pennsylvania, yet it would still be enough to win. It would be very close, but he would still be at 271. That's why this is a big deal, because even if their numbers are spot on in North Carolina, which I think there's going to be a big polling miss in North Carolina, I really believe it. I just think that some of these polls, they're dramatically understating Trump's support for whatever reason. I believe that in the state of North Carolina, there will be a big polling miss. But even if this is correct, it's not enough for Harris to win, especially if she's down by 3.5, 3 points in the Rust Belt, down by 2 in Wisconsin. It's not looking good for her at all. Now, as for North Carolina, like I said, I just find it so unlikely that North Carolina trends so Democrat when literally every other swing state, including Virginia, which, by the way, Red Eagle Politics a couple days ago, he brought up a good point. Virginia and North Carolina, since 2000, they move virtually the same amount. If one state moves like 2 points left, well, more than likely, the other state will do the same thing. The biggest variance in the trends was 2020. Virginia moved 5 points to the left, North Carolina only 2.5 points. But even then, there isn't a 10-point split. So if Trump is doing 5 points better in Virginia, which most people suggest that's what's happening, maybe a bit more, what do you think's happening in North Carolina? That's why I believe that they just got bad data, which every pollster has this. Every pollster has 1 or 2 bad polls, which is the case. It's going to happen. You're not going to be perfect 100% of the time. You're bound to have some wonky results. But if you're not convinced that, well, maybe there's something up with North Carolina and everything else is correct, because maybe it's a possibility that they got North Carolina correct, but every other state incorrect. That's an argument that some people might be making. Well, here's a problem with that. Atlas Intel released a national poll, 2 weeks ago, so it's maybe a bit outdated, but apparently the recent national polling data, which they haven't released yet, apparently it's roughly the same. But either way, right now, it's Trump +3 nationally, not in one state, not in like Florida. No, this was a national poll, which Atlas Intel, their best polls are national polling. They have Trump up by 3. That's a 7-point shift from 2020. If there's a 7-point shift from 2020, yeah, it would make sense that Trump's up by a lot in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. It makes less sense that he's down in North Carolina, down in Nevada by 3, barely winning Georgia. That's more likely that they just had weird data from North Carolina. More so than, oh yeah, every other state is actually wrong in favor of Democrats. They're understating Democrat support by 5 points in every other swing state. They're correct in North Carolina. They're correct in Nevada. It's possible, I guess, but what's more likely? That they just had one bad poll out of North Carolina, and that the rest of the poll is, relatively speaking, correct. Now, I'm not saying Trump's going to win Michigan by 3.5 to 4 points. That you could probably argue maybe they're overstating Trump a little bit in Michigan, but I would argue that all Atlas Intel did with the Michigan poll and even Pennsylvania, all it did was it corrected for the garbage we've seen from Quinnipiac, Marist, USA Today. You know, these polls had Harris up by 5, 4, 3, 5 points. It was ridiculous. While Atlas Intel, which is much better than these other pollsters, they found Trump with a lead of 4 points in Michigan. Pennsylvania, yet again, you could argue they corrected from the garbage from Bloomberg. If it wasn't for this garbage Bloomberg poll, it would be like a Trump +1 average right now. By the way, is it just me, or does it seem like in every one of these states, it's only Bloomberg showing this huge lead for Harris? Anyone else notice that? When literally every other pollster in Pennsylvania either has a tied race or a Trump lead, Bloomberg drops Harris +5. You can't make this up. It's nearly every swing state. Like Wisconsin, same deal. They found Harris +3 when everyone else except like 2 other pollsters found the race within a point. So when Atlas Intel dropped their Trump +2 poll, you might argue maybe they're overstating Trump, maybe by a point. I guess that's a possibility. But I really believe all Atlas Intel did by dropping this poll was correct from the garbage from Bloomberg and the New York Times. I mean, come on. Harris +3 in Wisconsin. In Pennsylvania, Harris +5. I just cannot believe that they just keep dropping the same garbage every couple of weeks. It's always when the polling gets bad for Harris. Every time the polls turn negative for her, out of the blue, they drop Harris +5. Who do I trust more? Atlas Intel, which actually has a good track record, or Bloomberg, who, like 5 times this cycle, they drop polls right when Harris or Biden was getting bad numbers. Every time. It's always Harris +5 or Harris surges in Michigan by 15 points. Every time. Now, with Atlas Intel, we all know with North Carolina, they have it Harris +3. And it's a big outlier. It is by far their biggest outlier because everyone else is saying it's a Trump lead. Except for, yet again, Bloomberg. Unbelievable. Like, I was kidding a little bit, but are you serious? It's always Bloomberg with Harris +2, Harris +3, Harris +4, when everyone else is saying it's a Trump lead. It might be a tie, but right now, it's a Trump lead. The only other pollsters that have Harris up in North Carolina is Bloomberg and, surprisingly, Emerson. Now, with Emerson polls, especially in swing states, they can lean to the left. Like, Emerson's a good pollster, but for whatever reason, their swing state polling, it can be pretty bad. Like, it can be off by quite a bit. So, could they be correct here? I guess, but I just find it more likely that Atlas, Intel, Emerson, they just got bad data. Out of North Carolina, they just had bad results that don't translate anywhere else. That would explain how Trump can be up in every other swing state, but losing North Carolina. That just sounds wrong. It just doesn't make any sense. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it likely? Hell no. It's not likely at all. But I guess it could happen where Trump loses North Carolina, but he wins Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, I guess. But I just find it very unlikely. I just don't think Atlas Intel, that they just polled the North Carolina properly. Or, no, I should say that. They just had bad data. They just had weird results that they thought, well, maybe it's because of a response bias. Maybe it's because Mark Robinson was doing so bad that it's sinking Trump. I guess that's possible, but we just got to see what happens. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.